President Trump had moved on to domestic matters, tweeting about the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, raids over the last few days, saying, quote, "The crackdown on illegal criminals is merely the keeping of my campaign promise. Gang members, drug dealers, and others are being removed!" Exclamation point. ICE said in one operation in Los Angeles, 164 nationals had been arrested and 37 of them were deported to Mexico. But not everyone swept up in these raids is a gang member or drug dealer or otherwise violent criminal. We asked the White House for a guest to discuss these and other matters with us this morning. They did not respond to that request. I am joined now by the Republican governor of New Jersey and former advisor to President Trump, Governor Christie. Governor, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here, Jay. Good morning.
So I want to start by asking you about the ICE raids, because it seems untrue that all of those being deported are dangerous individuals. Let's posit that deporting dangerous people who are here in this country illegally is a good thing. But one of those deported was Guadalupe Garcia de Rios. In 2008, she illegally used someone else's social security number for employment at a water park, for which she was later charged with a felony. The mayor of Phoenix, Greg Stanton, put out a statement after she was removed from the U.S. saying, quote, "ICE is spending its energy deporting a woman with 2 American children who has lived here for more than 2 decades and poses a threat to nobody," unquote. What's your message to the undocumented immigrants in New Jersey, your home state, who are not drug dealers, who are not gang members, who have not committed any sort of violent crime? Should they be worried about being deported?
Well, Jake, this is the problem with the whole failure of the federal government over the course of the last 12 to 16 years in not dealing with trying to reform the immigration system and bring some sense of order to this. When that's the case, then the laws that are in effect right now have to be enforced. And that's what's happening right now. Now, I know that the president's focus and his desire is to make sure that first they get violent criminals out of the United States, people who have been charged with violent acts. That's what I think what ICE is attempting to do. But as I can tell you, Jake, from having run a government for 7 years and been involved for many years as a U.S. attorney, things always don't go perfectly. And so you're going to have some people who also, by the way, have violated the law, but don't fit that one category. But that will be the overwhelming minority in all this. And what people should focus on is what the president is trying to do, which is to keep a campaign promise on making sure that violent criminals who are here illegally are taken out of the country in order to make America's streets safer.
But as you know, Governor, this is a big concern in the Garden State of New Jersey. Princeton officials are distributing information, letting undocumented immigrants know how to avoid deportation. New Brunswick, there's a debate about whether New Brunswick becomes a sanctuary city. What is your message to the citizens of your state about undocumented immigrants who, like the woman I just discussed, are not violent criminals, who have children who are American and are now in fear?
Well, Jake, first off, it should be surprising to no one that institutions like Princeton University, where, by the way, I'm a member of the board as governor of New Jersey, are going to take a very progressive, liberal position towards this, and will try to grandstand this during a time of political debate. Listen, our position has been the same all along. The federal government should be enforcing federal law. And they have to make clear that federal law will be enforced. If that's the president's desire, then he should go ahead and make sure that that's done. On the state level, we're doing the things that we've always done in New Jersey to try to keep our streets safe. That's why our prison population is at an all-time low, and crime declined again in New Jersey this year. So we're doing what we need to do at the state level to keep people safe, and the federal government should be enforcing federal law, and if they don't like the federal law, then they should go to Congress and get it changed.
Let's turn to Russia. CNN has now matched that bombshell Washington Post report that National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, according to several government officials, privately discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia with that country's ambassador right around the time that President Obama was imposing new sanctions and before President Trump took office. I guess there are 2 issues here. One is the White House not telling the truth about this conversation and the conversation itself. Let's take them one by one. If General Flynn did tell the Russian ambassador something along the lines of, "Don't worry about these sanctions President Obama is imposing, we're going to revisit them later," would that trouble you?
Well, listen, I don't think that you can have any more than one president at a time. And, General Flynn has said up to this point that he had not said anything like that to the Russian ambassador. I think now he's saying that he doesn't remember whether he did or not. So that's a conversation he's going to need to have with the president and the vice president to clear that up so that the White House can make sure that they're completely accurate about what went on. But I've always been a person who believed that you have one president at a time, and that's the way things should be done.
Well, And you touched on this in your answer. Because of General Flynn's original adamant denial, although as you point out, he has now walked it back, saying he can't recall, Vice President Pence, Sean Spicer have now said things to the public that are apparently not true. Take a listen to Vice President Pence on January 15th.
What I can confirm, having spoken to him about it, is that those conversations that happened to occur around the time that the United States took action to expel diplomats had nothing whatsoever to do with those sanctions.
If General Flynn lied to the vice president, what should the consequences be?
Well, that would be up to the vice president and the president. And so I'm sure that there'll be conversations between the vice president, the president, and General Flynn to make sure that everybody gets the accurate story on this matter, and that it's cleared up. And I think that's the obligation of General Flynn as National Security Advisor, to have those type of candid conversations with the president and the vice president, and then they'll act as they see fit given all the circumstances.
Let's turn to the fact that there are a lot of Republicans who are concerned about the rollout of President Trump's travel ban. You yourself said last week that President Trump was ill-served by his staff on the issue. I know that you're focused on finishing your job as governor of New Jersey, and you still have a year left. But after your term is over, if President Trump were to come to you and say, Chris, I need you to help run things, would you be willing to serve in the Trump administration?
Jake, you know we're not going to get into hypotheticals like that. My view is I've got a year to go, as you aptly put in your question, a little short of a year as governor of New Jersey. And then after that, as I've told everybody, my intention is to go to the private sector and work to help support my family in a different way than I've been able to over the last 16 years as U.S. Attorney and as governor. But as always, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has been my friend and Mary Pat's friend for the last 15 years. And whenever he calls or I call him and we have conversations, I'm always willing, if he asks, to give my opinion on things. But I have absolutely no intention nor any understanding that I'll be asked to be in the administration in the years to come. My view is I've got a job to do as governor, and then my intention is to go off to the private sector and to help support my family.
There are reports that President Trump, because his wife and his son are often in New York, that he makes a lot of late-night calls to friends and confidants. Are you among them? Have you talked to the president recently?
You know what, Jake? I've always said this before he was elected president, and it's even more important since he's been elected president. The conversations between me and the President of the United States, to the extent they occur, will always remain between me and the President of the United States.
Do you still talk to him, just as a vague concept? Do you still talk to him?
I don't know what vague concept means, Jake. Like I said, to the extent that those conversations occur, they'll remain between me and the president. What I will say to you is that Mary Pat and I still consider him to be a very good friend of ours. We have for the last 15 years, both he and the First Lady. And that friendship, I'm confident, will continue during the time that he's president and when he leaves the presidency.
Let's turn to health care. You took a lot of heat in national conservative circles when, as governor, you expanded Medicaid in New Jersey as part of Obamacare. Recently, you said that the naysayers have been proven wrong, and you touted the fact that an additional 500,000 people in New Jersey now have health insurance who didn't have it before. Have you asked President Trump to keep the Medicaid expansion in place even as the Congress and he vow to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Listen, I think repealing and replacing Obamacare was something that I was for when I was a candidate for President of the United States, and one that I'm still for now. And how that will happen is going to be the part of what I hope will be a really vigorous, open conversation between the executive branch and the Congress and the nation's governors, since the Medicaid program is 50% funded for the most part by the nation's governors and our state taxes over the course of the next number of months. And I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to be a participant in that conversation. And I will certainly share with the president and the administration the experiences we've had here in New Jersey on the Medicaid program. You know, for instance, 5 times the number of people are now getting drug abuse treatment in New Jersey through the Medicaid program that got it 3 years ago. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for America's future and for our children. And so I certainly will share those stories. And then the president and the Congress will make an overall policy determination as to how they want to move forward. But I am convinced The president and the Congress are both committed to repealing and replacing Obamacare, and I support them in doing so. The nuances of that, Jake, is something that I hope the governors get a chance to participate in, and if we do, you can count on the fact that I'll participate in that conversation.
Is it fair to characterize your position, though, as you don't want those 500,000 people who now have insurance who didn't have it before the Medicaid expansion and Obamacare, you don't want them to lose their insurance?
Well, Jake, I want them to continue to be able to have coverage. Now, there can be lots of different ways that can happen through a repeal and replacement of Obamacare. And there are great minds inside the Congress, led by Speaker Ryan, who are going to have ideas on how to do this. There'll be great minds in the administration, like Secretary Price, who has been a longtime leader on this, who will have ideas to do it. And what the president will do is what he's always done. President Trump is a deal maker. He knows how to bring people together and to close deals. That's his greatest strength as a leader. And I think he will bring these folks together along with the nation's governors, since we are stakeholders in this, and make sure that we get something that will take care of the people of the United States. He has always said he does not want a system where people are without health care. He said that from the beginning of his time as a candidate. I take him at his word, and we're going to work together to make sure that happens. Whether it's through Medicaid or another vehicle is something that we'll have to see as time goes forward and the ideas get fully fleshed out.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Always great to be with you, Jake. Thanks for having me.